I'm Darrell Owens. Welcome to A World of Difference. According to recent statistics, nearly 70% of American high school graduates attend college in the fall after they graduate. For most, the road to college has been a long planned out journey featuring a detailed roadmap. For most neurotypical students, it was always where they would attend college, not if. That's not always the case for students with learning disabilities. For students who learn differently, figuring out whether college fits in their post-high school plans isn't so cut and dried. Students and families must make real choices about their after-high school plans, and planning for where and when to try college is crucial. You'll meet a student who went through the process this summer. Next, our Ask the Experts panel will answer how parents can discern when their student who learns differently is ready for college. Later, you'll meet our latest difference maker, a British artist whose heartwarming paintings and sculptures make the world a much nicer place. But first, our correspondent Cindy Peterson introduces you to a Texas family who weighed the options and figured out the best process for maximizing their son's eventual college success.
Graduating high school was a huge achievement for 18-year-old Kian Gillen, who lives with ADHD and high-functioning autism. But his family is now facing a question that many families with special needs children will face. What comes next?
He started off at a local high school that his brother had gone to, and he seemed to just be drifting through. They were just kind of letting him pass along, and then I worked at a different county, so I decided to transfer him over to a school closer to where I was working, and they actually challenged him. For the first time, he actually had to do the work. Pretty much all the way through K through 12, he did very well academically, and just really, particularly in high school, the last 2 years of high school, he really flourished.
Usually I liked history the most. I mean, I like warships, like mostly just dreadnoughts to now.
In school, Kian was often overlooked because of his quiet and reclusive nature. Although he was able to find a few subjects he was excited about, the pandemic hit and Kian retreated further back into his isolation.
He is pretty easygoing, and I also think that's sometimes has been the problem in school, is where my older son would get into trouble and lash out and things like that, they had to deal with him. Where Kian's just that nice, quiet kid who, wants to be left by himself and doesn't want to bother anybody and doesn't want anybody to bother him. And that's still my concern, is where he's gonna eventually end up because of that.
He's already shy and withdrawn anyway, and he's very empathic, so he picks up on other emotions and people's feelings, so he just withdrew more. So he was hiding in his room more. The whole day would go by, I wouldn't see him. He would literally kind of flitter into the kitchen, grab something to eat, and flitter back to his room. And I figured that's what he needed at the time. I wasn't going to force the issue. And I have noticed when he went back to school face to face, it started to come back out of his shell a bit more, because he needed that. And I love having the little celebrations with him. And I love it when he comes in out of the blue. He won't have talked to me for a day, and suddenly he'll come in and he'll say something like, "Do you know Hitler was going to invade Ireland?" And I was like, I had no idea. And then he'd go off into a little monologue with me about, and I'd suddenly realize how much he'd been learning. And that whole day, when I thought he was just goofing around, he was actually reading and, really educating himself on stuff that nobody else knows.
I understand how capable he is, but he just needs the extra supports to get to that level where he can do that. And I think it also reflects back onto the fact that there are people that are much less impacted than him with other just learning disabilities like dyslexia and things like that aren't getting that support as well. And it's really limiting people in their potential.
The Gillens have decided to take a gap year for Kian, which involved picking up everything and moving to Maryland, to help give him more time to mature and gain some life experience. In the meantime, they plan to enroll him into online courses.
I would like to have had him repeat pre-K or kindergarten, but hindsight's 20/20. So this is a good year as any for him to just take a breath and just can dip his toes in the water a little bit with some like online college classes. And even though he didn't do great with online last year, everybody was just thrown in at the deep end. And we think with the program that we have him in now that he will actually, there'll be more supports and a little bit more accountability.
I also think when he had to go remote, we saw that he doesn't have certain independent and executive functioning skills that he needs yet. And I mean, I think we're both still concerned what happens now, where it's so much easier these days where you can see their grades almost in real time, and you can find out why something hasn't been done or something like that. But on the next level, he doesn't get that.
No, there'd be no college professors going to pick up the phone and say, hey, he missed 3 assignments or he hasn't shown up to class. And because that's what happened with our oldest. We tried it in with community college, and he just died a death because of the anxiety and everything, and he stopped going to classes. So we realized that we weren't going to repeat that experience for Cian, and Cian wouldn't tell us. He just quietly would do his thing and not let us know what was going on. If the child or the student can't advocate for themselves, or they don't have self-advocacy skills yet, it doesn't matter. They're not going to get the supports.
There are just certain skills that he needs to develop a little bit more and get more used to. His academic skills and his study skills could definitely be improved before he goes into another year of schooling, and also his social skills and how to separate what's normal for family and what's normal in a professional setting, and he has to wear pants outside of the house, little things like that he kind of has to work on about professionalism and the way he presents himself to other people.
Although not every family is able to offer a gap year for their children, the Gillens are hoping that this is the answer for Cian and are anxious to see how he grows in the coming year.
So I would say if you have a younger child or student, say middle school, high school, start to really look at what their interests are and not necessarily automatically think college is the be-all and end-all. It might be for them, but it might be they need a few years in between high school and college.
What I think it taught me really early in the children's lives is to not put your expectations or the world's expectations on things. Mm-hmm. Because, I'm into sports and athletics and things like that, and my sons could care less. They probably don't even know what a touchdown is, let alone, but once I understood that they're just not their interests are not gonna be my interests, and, I always knew that I didn't want to do that. I was a swim coach, and I tried very, very hard not to force them to swim because I coached it, and let them kind of choose their own path. Like that. But I guess that's the really not knowing how the story is going to end, is because we know he's really capable of so many things, and he is so knowledgeable. We're just trying to figure out where he can put that to best use, and what environment, someone who's not really, who just doesn't want to be a people person.
I mean, it feels nice to know that they didn't just essentially just give up the moment they realized it was going to be more difficult than usual with a child. So that was nice.
Although he is limited in certain ways, there are so many other ways that he expresses himself, and he can bring a lot of joy to a lot of people. That just makes me proud to understand I can be like, I knew him before he did all these amazing things that I know he's going to go on and do.
For A World of Difference, I'm Cindy Peterson.
Thanks, Cindy. The Gillen family story makes us ask how families can figure out whether college is in the offing, and if it is, how to actively take part in the transition planning process. For answers to these and other important questions, we turn to the experts. We're joined now by Dr. Jill K. Corbin, who is Director of College and Transition Counseling at Denver Academy, a Colorado coeducational independent day school serving diverse learners in grades 1 through 12. and also Dr. Wanda M. Hadley, who is an associate professor of higher education leadership, educational leadership, research and technology at Western Michigan University. And then there's Josephine Vonnerberg, who is an independent educational consultant and owner of Transitions College Advising, consulting company that specializes in helping students with learning differences plan and execute a successful transition to college. And last but not least, Alexander Morris Wood is Dean of Admissions, Transition Programs, and Strategic Outreach at Beacon College in Leesburg, Florida, which specializes in educating students with learning differences. The first question goes to Jill. When it comes to students with learning disabilities transitioning to college, who are the ones who are typically most successful after high school?
Well, in my experience, I would say that students who tend to be more successful in the transition from high school to college are those students who can effectively self-advocate, those who truly understand what their disability is and how it might impact their learning, and then also those students who are able to effectively communicate to people within the campus community for any additional supports or assistance. So if the student feels comfortable seeking out the Office of Disability Services, connecting with their professors during office hours, or even taking advantage of any of the peer tutoring services or the writing centers on campus, these are the students who tend to matriculate, retain, and they are successful in their college career.
Thank you, Jill. Any of our other experts care to chime in?
Having worked with that student population in the college environment, written about them, I've completed a lot of research about them in terms of my research agenda. I support what Jill says. What students often don't understand when they get to the college campus is they need to advocate for themselves. In K through 12, the school system normally moves them along and does a lot of the advocating for them. Once they move to college, it's their responsibility to do that. And students that have not been a part of a strong transition plan or who haven't really thought that through tend to be the ones that don't understand that. And they sometimes live in hiding and they don't advocate to the Office for Students with Disabilities because it's not the university's responsibility. And actually it's kind of a private issue until the student actually speaks up and asks for services or support.
Thank you very much, Wanda. Our next question is to Josephine. This is a basic but overlooked point. How important is it to be sure that attending college is the student's choice, not the parent's pre-birth conception of how their child's life will unfold?
It's extremely important. College is hard, and the students need to know that. And to have the sustained effort and motivation they need to succeed, they need to be in the right place for them. And a guiding principle of all independent consultants is that we find the right fit for the student, the right college, at the right size, with the right major, with the right support. But if the parent is leading the process, we're always concerned, and we have to discuss that if it's really the student's choice to want to be in college. It's not the next step for everyone at that point of their lives. So we can look at other options or consider a gap year, but the student has to be the one to lead that particular discussion and process.
Thank you, Josephine.
Just to echo, I think what's so important is that if the student is not in the driver's seat, then they're probably not going to do that self-advocacy work that they were talking about earlier, because parents cannot email the professors or check in on tutoring or contact disability resources. So the student really needs to be in the driver's seat around their decision to enter college, to enter support programs, or to engage with resources on a college campus.
Thank you, Alex. So this next question is to Wanda. As students with learning differences reach the Bell Lap in high school, should they do some soul searching, asking telling questions such as, do I really want to go to college and work harder than ever before?
Yes, and I think that's where the strong transition planning comes in at the high school level. Treating the student like any other student going off to college, exposing them to college classes, exposing them to the college environment, exposing them to various college settings is really important too. Trying to help them to understand that the disability doesn't go away when they move on to college, and sometimes students feel that way. And when they move on to college, again, they move almost from a passive student model to an active student model, like what Alex was talking about in terms of having to speak up and identify themselves and ask for services. So the more they can understand what they're stepping into when they move to the college environment, the better I think they will be in the environment.
Thank you. Anyone else on this one?
Well, Wanda, I think what you said is so key around the transition plan. I think so often we look at self-exploration as part of the post-secondary process, when in reality that should really be part of that IEP transition plan or an early intervention plan starting as young as freshman, sophomore year of high school. So it should go in congruent with the application process, with the college search process. It needs to be part of that elongated transition plan.
Thank you very much for that, Alex. Actually, the next question is to you. Alex, how does the student knowing fully about their learning disability play into their potential college success?
I think you started, Daryl, with a really good part, is they need to be really aware of their learning disability. When we look at probably the #1 factor that inhibits a student's ability to seek out services, to me it always comes down to self-awareness. Are they really aware of their strengths and weaknesses? Do they know the accommodations and modifications that they've received in high school? How often do they have to self-advocate? What accommodations carry over to high school and college? I think once you develop that real true sense of awareness of your needs and your prior services, then you could really start to critically evaluate your next placement. If you're not aware of your program prior to college, making that jump to college is going to be really tricky because you're not going to really know what to look out for, what to assess for, and how to determine a really strong post-secondary fit.
Thank you, Alex. Any other thoughts?
And to support what Alex is saying is, some universities even, we're preparing students to move on to the workplace. And some universities even have strong compensatory programming in the college environment, meaning that they bring the students in at a certain continuum and move them along the line where they're becoming more and more independent. Because, as I mentioned earlier, the disability doesn't go away, and we want the students to be able to survive and thrive in the workplace. And there's very little even transition support in the workplace in most environments. And I've done longitudinal studies with groups of students with disabilities, moving them from high school to the college environment and to the work environment. And students have found that they're even more isolated sometimes in the work environment, and having to speak up more and understand more about their disability, and how if they don't feel comfortable doing that, it could jeopardize some movement in the workplace. So basically understanding that disability and how it influences their performance is really key early on, if you will.
Watch the full Ask the Expert segment on our website at awodtv.org if you want to learn more information on deciding whether your LD student is ready for college. You can also watch or listen on Facebook, YouTube, or on your favorite podcasting platform. Finally, you've got to have heart. Indeed, one might say that saying is at the heart of the art that Mackenzie Thorpe creates. Actor Tom Hardy, author J.K. Rowling, and Queen Elizabeth II, to name a few, have collected the English artist's work, which combines tenderness and ardor through his unique depictions of animals and children. Yet, from early on, Thorpe having to endure having his heart torn apart by those who question his intelligence because of undiagnosed dyslexia. Our correspondent, Brad Kuhn, has that story.
Mackenzie Thorpe paints to make himself feel better. He's been making art since he was a child in Yorkshire, when his life was very dark and nothing outside of his drawings made sense, especially numbers and letters.
I was told every day of the week nearly how stupid and useless I am. And I believed it wholeheartedly. I'm not stupid. I'm dyslexic.
That knowledge didn't come until much later in life, when his son Owen was diagnosed and Mackenzie realized that what he had been led to believe was a mental deficiency was actually a learning difference shared by the men in his family going back at least 4 generations.
My dad was severely dyslexic. You know, he wrote 2 letters in his life to my mum, and that was it. And my grandfather was in his 20s when he learned how to spell hand, H-A-N-D. And my brother is worse than me.
It's hard to listen to the litany of mental and physical abuse that Mackenzie endured at the hands of classmates and even teachers.
One day I was shouting to the head of the class, and I was caned 6 times on each hand with a bamboo stick. And I wet myself, and everybody laughed. The next school I went to, I was told by the nuns that I'll never get a job, I'll never get married. I will, if I was to die now, God wouldn't let me go to heaven. And so my escape from that world was to draw. I was, in a sense, forced to do the only thing that I could do well. I would draw pictures in my books about history, the Battle of Trafalgar, whatever, and the teacher would go like, oh, wow, look at this. Mackenzie's done this. When we did engineering drawing, and when it, so like the side elevation, back elevation, the plan elevation on a piece of machinery, when it came to the isometric, the teacher would ask me to draw it on the board because he couldn't do it. And what I figured out then, very early, I was about 13, 14 then, I can see backwards, I can see upside down, I can see down, right? So I can see you from the back now, I can draw you from the back. I can be a camera in a room in the corner through my eye and draw in full perspective. That is the strength of that dyslexia is giving me, because I'm basically every other avenue shut down.
At 15, with failing grades and no prospect of getting a better position, Mackenzie dropped out of school and went to work with his father at the shipyards. At a friend's urging, he applied and was accepted to art school, much to his father's consternation.
My father said I would be airy-fairy, and take drugs and talk posh, and he didn't understand it at all. Why don't you stay here, stay in the shipyards, get some money, get married and have some kids, and then die, basically. And he said, you know, if you get to the point where you don't have to worry about your gas bill, you'll be all right. That was his ambition, to be able to pay his gas bill. You know, as long as he was doing that, then he was doing his job. And that's what he just didn't understand. You can draw at home. You don't have to go to a college. That's what he said.
He blossomed at school, married, and became a parent. He embarked on a career of government service, teaching art therapy to disabled children in London. In 1989, he and his wife Susan, a nurse, quit their jobs and moved back to Yorkshire with their 2 young children. Mackenzie opened a small art shop serving the hobbyists and vacationers who loved to paint the English countryside. It was a terrible idea, but it led to a better one.
There was no money in it. We were starving. There was nothing in it. And so I started drawing with the materials and started selling these drawings for £5, like $8, $10. And I was doing that and maybe selling like 5 or 6 a week. I know, oh, this is all right, you know, keep on doing that. And then I drew bigger ones. And then I wanted to draw my self-portrait, right, as a sheep, because I was surrounded by sheep. And it reminded me of Mark Rothko, a square. And I put the square in a landscape, which is Yorkshire. Then I put 4 legs on it and a head and called it Self. And I think it was September 1989. And I put it on the wall for £25 and it sold that week. Nobody had seen anything like that in the world before. It was totally unique. Lots of people didn't like it, smashed my window, told me to get out of town. I rang my teacher and he said to me, when somebody walks past a shoe shop and sees a pair of shoes that they don't like, they don't smash the window. You got a reaction. That's the job of an artist. In the village, you cause a reaction. You make people look at themselves. And then the radio came and the newspapers came. Then it was on television. Then I go to work and people would be sat outside in a queue. And I was taking so much money, I didn't know what to do. I met the Queen, all that kind of stuff. As a child, I had no self-esteem at all. I draw myself often with this child with no face because I believed I didn't have one, because nobody ever looked at me. And often then I used to draw figures without shadows. I still do, because I didn't cast a shadow. I was invisible. I was told every day of the week nearly how stupid and useless I am. And I believed it wholeheartedly.
To all the other lonely kids in duffel coats out there, he offers hope.
When I was that kid, when that nun said if I was to die, I wouldn't go to heaven, if a man or a woman walked in, a teacher, and said to me, Mackenzie, don't worry about the gas bill. Don't worry about getting married and having children and having a job, because if you just keep on drawing the way you do, you'll get better and better and better, and you won't need anything. Just do that.
And from parents, he asks for love and encouragement.
If you just care for and love the child, let them get on with it. Be proud of them. Give them the confidence to believe in themselves, and they'll find their own way and they'll do it, and they'll get to a point they'll do it without you. And they'll come home one day with their partner and their children, and everything will be fine.
For A World of Difference, I'm Brad Kuhn.
Thanks, Brad. And congratulations, Mackenzie Thorpe, for being a difference maker. That's it for this edition of A World of Difference. I'm Daryl Owens. I'll see you back here next time. You can watch episodes of A World of Difference on the Beacon College Facebook and YouTube channels and on the show's website, awodtv.org. The website also provides tip sheets and other resources for your parenting journey. And you can listen to the show on the go on Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and other popular podcasting platforms. Thank you for watching and supporting A World of Difference.